So I prepared a short talk, and for this talk I've made an object, which is this object here in front of me. Since I've not determined a title for the object yet, I will call it IT during my talk. It is 69 by 33 by 18 centimeters big and weighs about 50 kilograms. It is made from plasticine clay, whose colors appeared this way by blending mostly white clay with a little bit of red and brown clay. Blending them together, but not too well, so it gets the right effect and gives you the illusion of skin and body. I imagine if you look through your eyelashes, it and I, the performer, would overlap with one another and become an extension of each other. The performer will turn it a bit more in your direction now, so you can see its contours better. Its smooth shapes, round lines, curves, tone, form, figure. Its physical strength, heavy but flexible, formable, variable, impressionable, hesitant, skeptical, with its range of colors from light to dark tints, pastels. Its soft spots where the performer can push one finger inside or 2, 3. The performer can see it, feel it, touch it, and talk to it. Its smooth texture that makes the performer glide over its surface, a bit slippery and cold, but as soon as the performer starts kneading it, it will slowly warm up and get soft and smooth. This is also the part where the hands come into the picture, the one hand and the other hand, who together can warm up the clay by modeling and pretending to model. You can tell that they are related, but normally operate independently as individuals. However, every now and then, when they need each other, they meet up somewhere in the middle, with clapping, for example. The one hand is made by the other hand, and as you can see, is made out of the same materials as it. The other hand made the one hand in cooperation with the eyes. Observations that were made by the eyes were directly communicated to the other hand. The eyes gave directions that the other hand then followed precisely. A good and successful cooperation, hand-eye coordination, looking and acting, action-reaction, to add and to remove, turning and bending, removing and adding, kneading and massaging. Being a baby, it's the other way around. It's not the eyes, but the hands that are leading. The hands will go somewhere, and the eyes will follow where they are going out of curiosity. Later, as the performer becomes more calculated, the eyes prefer to watch first before they let the hands start acting. Kneading, massaging, stretching, pulling. The hands will not start any action before being in clear eye contact with the eyes. Only then they will start an activity such as modeling, back and forth, up and down, diagonally. Moving from one part to another, the other hand follows the one hand, It repeats its movements accurately, like an exercise in copying, sometimes in parallel, and sometimes to accentuate the movement of the one hand, and sometimes mirroring the movement to create symmetry. I prefer asymmetrical above symmetry. It creates images that, in my opinion, are more interesting, less predictable. But the relationship of symmetry to aesthetics is complex. People use biliteral symmetry to judge the likely health or fitness of other people. Opposed to this is the tendency for excessive symmetry to be perceived as boring or uninteresting. In social interactions, you can as well observe the symmetrical nature, often including asymmetrical balance in a variety of contexts. These include assessments of reciprocity, empathy, apology, dialogue, respect, justice, and revenge. Symmetrical interactions send the message, "We are all the same," while asymmetrical interactions send the message, "I am special, better than you." But it's up to both hands to decide what kind of relationship they want to build up, whether they would like to show something that is based on equality and mutual respect, or whether the one hand actually is in a position that allows it to assert its power over the other hand. I think the latter is in the one hand's nature to pursue, to be in a position where it can show its power over the other. Sometimes the one hand changes directions very quickly, but the other hand knows exactly how to keep track, even when it happens unexpectedly, leading and following, following and leading. In a partner dance, following and leading is accomplished by maintaining a physical connection that is called the frame, that allows the leader to transmit body movements to the follower and for the follower to suggest ideas to the leader. A frame is a stable, structural combination of both bodies maintained through the dancer's arms and/or legs. The general rule for open connections is that moves of the leader's hand, back, forth, left or right, are originated through moves of the entire body. Accordingly, for the follower, a move of the connected hand is immediately transformed into the corresponding move of the body. So it's all about reading the language that the body produces. As soon as one starts mirroring the other's movements, it means that they are understood. This applies not only to body language, but to other forms of copying or mirroring as well. The copy shows its respect to its original. It's a way to make you become part of something bigger, a group or movement, something that can make you feel stronger, connected, because you are being in some relation with one another, like a copy of a copy of a copy. But an exact definition of a group is hard to give. People who play soccer together will be considered more easily a group than people who stand in line in front of a cash machine, for example. There are also many different groups one can make, and people often belong to more than one, although not always voluntarily. It can happen that one is part of some group without realizing or deciding oneself. This also happened to the performer, the hands and it, who the creator developed, created, and then decided to show in public together. Whether they like it or not, we are a group. And as a group, we have a big influence on each other and how we are seen individually. Our identities are inseparable, and we know that. Only together we can stretch our fingers and clench our fists, show our muscles, a sign of masculinity. We become strong instead of soft, big after small, symbolic after frivolous, glossy after satin. Of course, the performer only speaks about what can be observed, the visuals, staging and performing, being aware of herself in front of the audience, the camera, how she's been looked at and being interpreted. But the performer hasn't spoken yet about the fact that deep inside of the creator, there is a much more mystical and dark side towards reality. There are very complicated concepts hidden inside of the creator's body that won't easily show themselves to daylight. Sometimes the term complex is confused with the term complicated, but they mean very different things. Complex means it's the opposite of independent, while complicated is the opposite of simple. The performer isn't familiar with these complexities that include ideas, intentions, feelings, memories, references. She's an employee of the creator, one who works on commission and does what she's asked to do. The performer is responsible for how she speaks and exposes ideas, but not for the content that these ideas include, the topics that are put here on the table. This task is assigned to the creator, who at this stage of the work can only be passive and witness what is happening, right here, right now. But earlier, in the process of making, the creator had to deal with all layers of concepts that her body contained. Sometimes links between these concepts can be made very easily, while in other cases they are more complicated to make. A concept of happiness, for example, is easier to recognize than a concept of doubt or surprise. But it's not easy to control these streams that circulate simultaneously from head to toe, arm to leg. Especially because it happens out of sight, that what takes place within the creator remains invisible to the eyes. Even though the eyes led the making of the one hand, they could not prevent the making of it. It appeared in front of them, but the eyes had no idea what was happening and who gave the instructions for creating. They didn't know that it were actually the invisible concepts that gave the instructions, the feelings, memories, and references of the creator's body. The performer realizes that we enter a very complicated matter here that is sometimes hard to follow, especially because it happens out of sight. At the same time, the hands are digging deeper inside of it, which doesn't directly link the spoken word with the visual act. But for the performer, it's sometimes hard to know how to deal with the hands, what to do with the hands. The hands maneuver their way through the clay in search for the invisibles, while the creator thinks about how to make them visible. In the meantime, the performer has no other solution for controlling the invisibles, so she leaves the hands doing their job. In most science fiction and fantasy films, the opposite is happening. Their invisibility is often used as a secret power. The ability to be invisible is mainly used by the characters as a strategy to achieve something that otherwise would be impossible to achieve. For example, a main character's invisibility teaches him a more shadowy side of himself, which makes him murder. Or a woman who figures out that her husband is having an affair by spying on him while invisible. A group of people entering invisibly to get access to secret information, or a character who can listen to what people are saying behind his back. The characters in these films can achieve this invisibility by any number of different mechanisms, like through magic, mind control techniques, or paranormal fiction. Strictly speaking, invisibility does not show up, so itself is not the subject of any special effect techniques. But interaction of invisible subjects with the visible world does call for special effects, especially in the case of invisible people wearing visible clothing, holding a glass of wine, or being in a fight. These examples on invisibility show the creator how to deal with the unseen and make it an advantage rather than experience them as obstacles. The very fact that these concepts are not visible can be a benefit in some situations, especially when they can be used as a tool to unravel hidden, not to be confused with invisible facts, things we normally better keep a secret. The hands are such a good mediator because both can collaborate with the eyes as well as with the invisibles. They are the ones who can make the connection between the two worlds, the visible and the invisible, known and unknown, seen and unseen, familiar, unfamiliar, comfortable, uncomfortable. Usually the hands will follow the eyes, as the eyes are more prominent, but as soon as a certain confusion or hesitation is observed in their way of looking, the hands will focus on the invisibles, disregarding special effects. They might work in film with the presence of a filmmaker, but the performer, who has no knowledge of magic or doesn't have any kind of magician skills, can do that. Dank u. Thank you.